Browns fans, it's Spencer German coming to you from the Cross Country Mortgage Campus out here in Berea on the final day of Cleveland Browns mandatory minicamp. A lot of stuff to go over, a lot of stuff to sort of set the stage, if you will, for what's to come down the pike here in July when they reconvene at this place. But for now, everyone's broken for summer, and that includes us in the media who get a couple weeks sort of away from the team before the real fun begins with training camp later next month. Do want to encourage you to head on over to Cleveland Browns on si.com/NFL/Browns. Check out any of our written content over there. Well, all part of the same network, obviously, here, with this being the YouTube channel. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button just yet to the YouTube channel, please do. We continue to put some solid content out over there. All the press conferences from out here, mini camp. We hear from the position coaches today, so you can hear what they had to say about certain players and groups and things, and plenty of other great stuff, like more content like this for Anthony and I break down everything's going on with the team. So, Megs, I know you obviously were not on site today, but I can tell you today felt more like a tease, if you will, for training camp, where the 11-on-11 started, and Joe Flacco was the first man up. We didn't get to see a lot of him in terms of taking snaps and reps with that group or in a lot of these drills the first 2 days, but day 3 was about getting him some work here before they break for the summer. And I kind of thought that sort of signaled and set the tone for, okay, Flacco and Pickett at the top of the depth chart. They sort of went one after another. And then Dylan Gabriel got a few reps with the first 11-on-11 session early on, and then they broke off into their separate fields again, where it was Flacco and Pickett on one field and Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders on the other field. And that kind of just feels like what we've been sort of projecting for most of the spring, and how things will probably open up when training camp begins at the end of July.
Yeah, no doubt. And we talked about it on our show that actually aired earlier today. But when we were talking about it last night, you think you were dead on that. Like, Flacco didn't have many reps in the first 2 days of minicamp, and that actually signaled to both of us that, hey, he's more securely actually the number one guy, where all the rest of the group is just trying to figure it out and find their way. I think it's also important. We talked about it every single show we've done, throughout this first part of the offseason, but context is important, and context here is important too. Like, this is a very good time to get the rookies and get the young guys to understand what a practice is like, understand what a week looks like, so that when training camp does roll around, they can have a legit competition. This isn't to say that, Spencer and Anthony are saying that Joe Flacco's running out of that tunnel in week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals under center, but coming into training camp, it's always felt like it's going to be Flacco's job to lose, and Shedeur and Dylan Gabriel and Kenny Pickett's job to go try and win. And today, again, like you saw it with your own eyes, that was a lot of the feel as that day went on.
Well, yeah, and as we talked about with the Kenny Pickett narrative, like, I do think this team loves him, and they've talked very highly of him, spoken very highly of him. They think he has a legitimate shot. Here's what I'll say. I think camp opens up sort of with what we saw today. Flacco and Pickett are sort of 1A, 1B, and then it's Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and everyone. They'll continue to call it an open competition, but I think that's what the depth chart will essentially look like when training camp begins. And then it's kind of all right, change our minds, right? Like, if Kenny Pickett, who's been a preseason star before during his career, balls out in some of these preseason games or looks really good during camp or joint practices and things, then maybe he takes over that top spot and solely, like, it's his alone. And that, I think that's what the Browns maybe want to see happen. But I do think it sort of starts that way going into camp, and then it'll just be about what these guys look like, what they do with the reps that they are given, how the preseason games go, how those joint practices go. The joint practices are always a very enlightening couple sessions to get a sense of, like, where things are at, depth chart wise, what guys look like, what's going well, what's not. So to me, that sort of feels like how this thing is going to open up. Flacco 1A, Pickett 1B, and then the rookies sort of duking it out at the bottom of the depth chart. And in some ways, it's kind of like two different quarterback competitions, right? It's these two guys are fighting for the top spot, the two veterans, and then the two rookies are fighting for the backup spot, or the two backup spots, I guess, or maybe the primary backup spot, because I think we all kind of believe that one of those veterans will not be here by the time the season kicks off on September 7th.
Yeah, and I would also add to some more that the context word is kind of our word of the week. But, like, when you look at the Browns' schedule, I think it just even more so amplifies that it's going to be one of these veterans that get the nod, regardless, in my opinion, regardless of how camp goes, because you open up with the Bengals, the Ravens, the Packers, the Lions, the Vikings, the Steelers, and then you go Dolphins, Patriots before the bye week. That is an absolute murderer's row to start a season, to start an NFL career. And I think that it lays out perfectly for Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett to be the guy for those first 2 months. You get to the bye week and then you get some reprieve. And if things are going poorly, all right, it's time to figure out what you got in one of these rookies. If things are going well and Joe Flacco's got this team at, 500 or 6-4, and you're like, oh, maybe the playoffs are on the horizon. Maybe you keep it status quo. But I think with the way that this whole situation has fell into place, it's a perfect opportunity for the Browns to start the season, try to be competitive. And if it doesn't work out, then you can deal to one of the rookies to learn what you have in those guys. I think it laid out actually pretty perfectly for this.
Yeah, no, we've touched on that a little bit earlier in the offseason when the schedule was released, just how tough that opening stretch is. It does kind of, just by design, make it feel like a veteran starting there feels more likely. I do think that's how the Browns want to start the season. I don't think they want to put either of these rookies out there too early. I think they're going to slow play that. And, I think that will sort of take shape even more when training camp begins here in Berea a little over a month and a half from now. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but that's my feeling on it as well. Speaking of, we talked about Flacco getting the opening reps with the 11 on 11s. I didn't say what his performance looked like though, and I actually thought Flacco didn't look like the typical Flacco. He had a couple balls that he was thrown into tight coverages, and there was a number of balls that were just kind of batted down. Couldn't really find guys on the connecting end. He had one really good throw in a later session of 11 on 11s where they were sort of like doing like the full field. It might have been actually the start of the 2-minute session, and he zipped a ball like right in front of a defender to Jerry Jeudy, who was like right on his heels. And Jerry, I don't think was like ready for it. I don't think he was expecting it. And he kind of got his hands up late and it went right through his hands. That was probably his best throw of the day, even though it wasn't caught. And he had a couple easy completions, a couple nice throws that he tends to do. It's classic Joe Flacco. I'm not reading too much into the results again this time of year, but I think what that told me and spoke to today was just that I thought the defense in general was really aggressive. Like there was jokes made from some of the coaches, the position coaches we talked to today about the idea that there's like that summer, that end of school sort of mindset when you have like your last practice before you break for summer. And it felt like the defense didn't have that mindset. The defense, it seemed like it was another day of work for them. And the offense may be a little more lethargic, if you will. I thought in general, the quarterbacks today were just okay, like across the board. Shador, I think, did fine in the portions he was working in with those 3s and 4s again today, sort of back to doing that rather than the 2s. Dylan was fine with the 2s and 3s. And I thought, when Pickett was, I thought Pickett might have had his best day of the week, honestly. Like, he actually looked decent today comparatively. But I think in general, everybody sort of struggled, and I think it just spoke to the mentality of this defense. They were flying around. I think the secondary specifically was really, really tight coverage today, doing some nice things and sort of giving you some final good reps before the summer break here.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear too, because you like it when these days are tug of wars, and it does feel like everything that you've seen and we've talked about, that the one defense has been strong throughout the whole week. Maybe not so much defenses 2 and 3. And
I mean, listen, real quick, Megs, like there was a couple plays today where like Miles got in the backfield again.
Yeah,
there was a play where Mason got in the backfield. Like you can tell, and this time of year,
yes,
you'd expect the defense to be ahead of the offense. For them, it's just kind of like pin your ears back and play. The offense is trying to like work out some quirks and kinks and figure some things out, install some things. So it's a different sort of setup. And that'll be the case when training camp opens too. Like the defense should be ahead of the offense. But I thought today they ended on a very strong note, the defense did.
It is awesome too. And the way that I always think about it from an offense perspective versus defense perspective, like on offense, you need 11 guys to do their job for the play to be successful, right? The play is an unsuccessful play if the 5 guys up front block it perfectly, the running back blocks it perfectly, the quarterback throws a perfect ball, and the receiver drops the catch, right? That's an unsuccessful play. On defense, only one guy has to make a play. The defensive end could bust around the edge and get to the quarterback before the cornerback trips and falls, right? So it doesn't, like on defense, you just need 1 or 2 guys to make plays. On offense, you need all 11 to be doing their job. That's what makes it tough. And that's why when you say, hey, early on in the season the offense may be a little bit behind the defense and so on and so forth. That's what that means, and why often is the case at the start of these things. But it's still good to see, right? It's still good to see Miles putting in good work. It's still good to see this secondary, because, you know, for the third or fourth year in a row now, we're going to say that this defense has a strong secondary. Denzel Ward's not getting any younger. He's still an elite player, but he ain't getting any younger. Martin Emerson's got a lot to prove after last year. Greg Newsome's got a lot to prove after last season. So it's like, hey, really good to see that these guys on defense are coming to work, getting ready to go, and doing so in an effective way. And it's awesome to hear that that's the taste that they left in their mouth as we get into the summertime.
Yeah, also a couple of things I tried to just keep an eye on today, you know, knowing it's the last chance we get to see these guys before training camp. We know it's kind of an open competition for that other defensive end spot opposite of Miles. I saw a lot of Alex Wright, though, first up as the guy on the opposite side. Not that Isaiah McGuire's like out of the conversation. He wasn't really as active today out on the field, so I think he was kind of like more off on the side a little bit. But I've been interested to see like who's coming out first with the ones, and it's been a lot of Alex Wright, I think, the last 2 days really. So I thought that's kind of notable that, you know, he came back from this tricep injury. He got off to a great start of the season with that sack for the safety against the Jaguars to kind of seal the deal there in week 2. Mm-hmm. One of the Browns' only wins was kind of credited to him. And then he was derailed by the injury. So I actually talked to him sort of one-on-one yesterday, and he said he feels healthy and feels like he has a lot to prove as he comes into year 4 now with you know, this potential opportunity that's in front of him. So excited to see what he kind of brings to the table. I think he showed some stuff this week already. Yeah. I also think too, I mean, I'm not going to go overboard here with saying this, but I think that the linebacker group is maybe better than we are giving. Maybe not. I don't even know if better is the right word, but like deeper than we're giving him credit for. We've talked about that being such a need for this team in recent years, but I kind of forgot about I didn't really forget, but I kind of just like forget that Jerome Baker's on this team. He's a veteran guy who's pretty rangy and can do some different things for you, show you some different things. Carson Schlesinger obviously is going to get some plenty of opportunities as a rookie, as being the first overall pick in the second round. You know about Jordan Hicks already. Devin Bush is back, who I thought did a really solid job as a backup guy for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah last year. So I think that group actually has some depth to it, even without JOK, who we know is a big blow to this defense not being out there. So I'm kind of interested to see that group. Like, that's going to be something I think I'm going to pay attention to during camp, especially like how that group is sort of functioning, what the rotations look like, and how they kind of grow, because I almost feel like there's more depth there than we thought initially. And I have another thought in relation to the defensive line, but I'm actually going to save it, Megs, because I think it's a good topic for a show that we do here in the coming weeks when we don't have as much to talk about. So I'm gonna sit on that one for now.
Let me jump in on the linebacker conversation, because I think you make a great point that it feels like such despair when you lose potentially your best player on defense, and you know the significance of his injury was still unknown at this point in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, but it's always such a blow, and you're like, dang, it's one of our better players. And the fact that he's going to be gone, you know, he's not playing next year for sure, is a huge blow. And you're like, that room automatically goes down a couple notches. But you're right. The depth on that can't be denied. And it's going to have to be, you know, linebacker by committee. And you can be successful that way. The guys all have to you're not going to have, you may have a standout guy in Schlesinger. That would be the one guy you could point to and be like, hey, if there's going to be a star in that room, it could be you. The rest of them have to be good by committee. And there's no reason they can't be. And a lot of veteran guys who've seen a ton of football and can prove that you know they can be effective, and I think that part can't be lost, because I agree with you. I thought that that linebacker room was one of the lower rooms on this team, but if they can do it together as these veteran guys, I think that they can turn a lot of heads and prove a lot of people wrong from that perspective.
Yeah, I leave camp really optimistic about the defensive side of the ball. They get a bad rap for last year because the team was 3-14, but I still argue there was a number of games where they kept them in it. They kept it a one-score game, kept it as close as they could, and the offense was just so bad, so anemic, that they ended up, you know, sort of getting gassed and would lose. And Joel Bitonio talked about that a couple weeks ago with like the idea that like the offense was out on the field, the defense was on the field for like 70 to 80 plays because the offense was going 3 and out so much, and how they have to sort of change that dynamic to help each other out. But I walk away from minicamp feeling like the defense is going to be a strong suit of this team again. And I think across all 3 areas, they have a chance to really, really be successful. So I'm excited to see what that looks like what the next step of that looks like when training camp opens up at the end of July. As I alluded to, Megs, we did